This is what I look at to actually look at the comments.
Oh, I got it. Sorry, I just wasn't paying attention.
All right, go.
Whoa. Okay, our director has said that we are live. Good Friday, everybody. Back for another live Q&A here with the Edge team. And so myself, Paul Poi, here again, coming over from last week, joined by...
Maverick.
Oh,
Brett, I have an update.
Back in town.
I am. Yeah, I was...
Where'd you go?
Where was I? I was in Utah. I was actually hiking with the family and some friends in Zion National Park. Beautiful place. First time. I can't wait to go back again. Also, I have an update on my position in my LinkedIn profile. Chief of Dankness.
Dankness.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much
You
that's
don't like
accurate.
It is pretty
accurate.
accurate. I think
Is it really?
I think it is.
Dank
I try to make sure
dank
our
has
products and services and our team is dank as dank as possible.
Well, then
For the new generation.
Then you're failing because I don't know if it's that dank.
Why not?
Yet.
Oh, well, I
Getting
think
there.
we have the seeds. The seeds are planted and they're being watered right now. But
All right, we'll see what sprouts up.
let's talk about the new release.
Yeah, so we got some definitely new stuff that just got launched this week, and that's a source of a few questions like, hey, what just went into this? And stuff that we've been working on for quite some time. So released just earlier this week in the new 1.8.3 of Edge is now support for two new exchange partners, LibertyX, which is actually an old partner that we had in our previous app, Airbits. At the time, it let people buy Bitcoin with cash at a bunch of different merchants around the US. But now it actually supports debit cards too. You actually be able to buy Bitcoin with cash from your phone with various ATMs. They're not even crypto ATMs. They're like regular ATMs that connect to their payment network. So you can put cash into the ATM. So most ATMs spit out cash, but there are actually some regular ATMs that can actually accept cash. So for those, they can take cash, and then it'll send crypto right to your phone. You don't even have to scan the QR code. You do it all from within a plugin inside of Edge. And then some of those ATMs also accept debit cards.
Yep.
So you'll use your debit card and get crypto sent directly to your phone using the plugin inside of Edge. That's LibertyX, available in the US. But then the really cool plugin that just went in is with MoonPay, a new partner of ours that now supports credit cards as well as Apple Pay for those of you who have an iOS phone. And currently launched in Europe, Canada, and South Korea.
Yeah.
I think almost every single country in Europe. But then expanding to other different countries in the future. And so we're hoping by the end of the summer, we'll see broad sweeping support around most of the major countries, hopefully including the US, since that's where we're at. And I'd love to be able to use Apple Pay to buy Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. And so those are the two major features that just got added into Edge. Definitely give it a try. Download, update the app if you haven't already.
And it's definitely an example of things to come because both of the providers are pretty unique in terms of geography and ways of onboarding people, and we want to make sure we can onboard and offboard people as many possible in as many jurisdictions as possible. I really like what LibertyX is doing in terms of using existing physical infrastructure.
Exactly. You don't have to roll out new ATMs and new locations.
Not at all. Which people are doing that. That's cool too. But LibertyX is kind of doing they have their own method of onboarding people, and MoonPay's integrating Apple Pay, which Apple Pay is a really good user experience.
It actually really is.
People really like it.
I use it on a regular basis. It's my default when I go to Whole Foods, a few cafes around the area.
So you think it's probably the best fiat spending
it's
gateway,
the best physical,
right now?
And in some ways digital, fiat payment method user experience.
Yeah,
user experience.
They've done a great job.
It probably isn't that great for the merchant from the viewpoint of the fees and typical credit card transactions and whatnot, but it's great for the consumer in the sense that it actually generates a dynamic new credit card that is then a credit card number that's sent to the merchant, and so merchants actually can't easily track customer purchases. They can't say, oh, this credit card number has made this $500 purchase, this $1,000 purchase, this $5,000 purchase. It's a different number each time.
And then is that
to get better privacy?
And does that also mean is that stuff happening locally on the phone when you pay? Like, is that encrypted on the phone and any of that data? I know Apple's made a pretty big pitch, at least rhetorically and in advertisements, that they're really valuing privacy. And we also saw from the San Bernardino, the unfortunate terrorist attack, that they couldn't get into.
Yeah, they couldn't get the actual
into the phone.
Right, exactly.
So, like you said, it's probably a more private option than what most people are used to. So
it definitely is a private option. The
big ups
irony
to
of it
Apple.
is if I go to the Apple Store even, and I purchase something, and I swipe my credit card, those little handheld point-of-sale iPhone things that they've got will know that it's me, and will say, oh, okay, welcome, Paul, and would you like us to send you an email receipt at this exact email address? Because they remembered that that's what I punched in the last time I used the same credit card. Ironically, if I use Apple Pay, it doesn't know it's me at the Apple Store.
I like that.
And so that's, of course, there's some pros and cons to that. Since it doesn't know it's me, it doesn't know my email address, so I have to actually enter it every time I want the receipt. But it does provide that elevated level of privacy, even from Apple. So that's kind of a unique piece, but I think the convenience is really where it's at. So physical, tap to pay, really easy. On the web, double tap to confirm your Apple Pay payment. And on the fiat side, I think this is very, and this is not impossible with crypto either. I think crypto can build a similar user experience, but it requires a lot of coordination and agreement between multiple parties, which obviously Apple, being nearly $1 trillion company, can kind of force that cooperation. Yeah. Whereas crypto, not really having anyone significantly backing it in one place, it's a little tougher, but I think we'll get there.
And there's things you can do with centralizations that you can't do with decentralization, and vice versa.
Yeah, there are a few of those unfortunate things. Yep.
We talked about the integrations. Are there any other new items that users should know about in the new release? Or
there's a few fixes, networking fixes to connect to the decentralized network of blockchain currencies and whatnot, Bitcoin and other currencies. But primarily, those are the two main big nugget features. And I think keep your ears peeled. We got one comment from a user that got, I think, our newsletter announcing Apple Pay support via MoonPay, and he was really bummed because he's like, oh, it's not available for me. It's like, oh, I got all excited, but it doesn't work, because I'm assuming he was in the U.S. or some other country outside of Europe. So keep your ears peeled for when we do start supporting other regions with Apple Pay and other different payment methods. You'll see a lot of different native payment methods and countries supported over the next couple of months. That's kind of our big rollout over the summertime, is good native fiat on-ramp support. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. And next thing on the list, big news, kind of a good testament to how Bitcoin works.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Is Bitmain, one of the biggest miners in the world, mined an invalid block.
That was rejected
by the network. And it's not hard to be rejected by the network. If anyone is just taking the conventional code base that is built by either Bitcoin Core or BTCD or libBitcoin, and you don't modify it, then you shouldn't be creating an invalid block.
Yeah.
And in the same sense, you should also be able to detect that a block is invalid and then reject it, either at the full node level or at the miner level. So other miners would effectively not pick up this block and say, this is no good, I'll just keep mining on the previous block.
Yeah. And what the big story for me for introducing new users to this, just the system, if they wanted to understand it, is this is a really good example of how proof of work works and how the system works in general, where you have this, Bitmain is known as probably one of the more competent and dominant mining entities in the crypto space, and they've been very important. They have a lot of power, and people, rightfully so, are always looking at power within these networks and who has it and who's mining and who's not. And they didn't follow the rules. They mined a block, and there was something about the block that was deemed invalid by other nodes on the network, and it was dropped. It wasn't added to the Bitcoin blockchain,
right.
And everyone could, all the independent nodes could see it. Use that money or that opportunity cost to get those new Bitcoins, but they had to spend a lot of money to get rejected, right? So
they put in that mining effort, the electricity into mining that block, and then not actually achieve the reward.
And if someone's doing that on purpose, over time that can be very expensive, not only in cost but what you're giving up.
So the interesting question to me, which hasn't really been answered on the forums that I've read in any of the articles yet, is was that invalid block? Obviously, I don't think Bitmain had any motivation to just simply mine an invalid block.
It could have been a mistake.
It could have been a mistake. Problem is, there's not a human there that's making that mistake and saying, I want to mine this block that's just simply invalid. It's code. Someone wrote the code, and that code is effectively choosing to create this block that's invalid. The irony of it was that Bitmain themselves mined the actual real valid block immediately after.
Yep.
So they already knew that their own block was invalid and not to use it.
So
and you can't
if
deploy
they knew,
new
then
code.
I would imply intentionality.
Well, not necessarily, because remember, you don't go and change code and deploy it in minutes. So this is the most interesting thing to me, is the fact that there's code that's live that's choosing what to put into the block, what data is created to create this block. And that same code, almost certainly that same code, is the code that deemed that block invalid and created a new block instead.
So why did it work?
Valid.
Why did it work in one case and not the other? Is that your question?
That is my open-ended question.
Do you have any?
I don't have insight. I don't have any theories about that yet. Actually, this is the biggest.
You're drawing a blank on this.
I am going to draw a bit of a blank on this because I could imagine that
I don't have any
if
theories either.
they had a bug, say they had a custom implementation of the block generation code, right? Which transactions included, which ones not to, but
proprietary Bitmain software.
Yeah, exactly. And anyone can do this. Like, you don't have to run the open source code. As long as it adheres to the protocol, you could run whatever code you want. And I can imagine if Bitmain mined an invalid block in one condition, there was some corner case that got hit, but its code thought it was valid, and then someone else immediately mined a truly valid block and stomped on top of it. And then Bitmain's normal logic would say, well, I'm following the longest chain. So it thinks it's the longest chain. Some other miner mines another block instead of it. Now you have now you have a fork.
You have a split network.
You have a split in the network, and only when another block gets mined on top of
do you know which one
to follow.
Yeah.
And so the basic consensus software that all the miners would be running would say, even though I mined this block, I'm going to follow the longer chain and throw away my own. Right? That would make sense. But the fact that they actually mined the next block, not on top of their own. If they mined it on top of their own, even that would make sense. Even on top of their own invalid block. That would actually make more sense too.
Yeah.
Because
that means
code. Yeah, that means that their code
didn't accept their own code?
Exactly. Their own code didn't accept their own code. That to me is the really odd part that hasn't been explained yet, is what condition made it such that one part of its code would create this block and deem it valid, and another block of code create a different block, ignore the previous because it deemed it invalid.
I don't know if this is a stupid question, but let's if we're getting down to lines of code, could there be multiple sources of lines of code that are pulling from different libraries, so to speak, into one little, I don't know.
It would be a bad idea. You would think that the validation of a block, is this block valid, should be the same code all throughout the implementation. And so maybe one block of code creates the block, but they always want to go through that little check to go, okay, make sure that it's valid. And another block of code just checks that it's valid, whether the block comes from them or from somewhere else. Right? It's just block validation. So this to me is probably the biggest surprise, and one that I want to dig into a little bit. I just kind of heard about this one today, and so haven't had the time to dig a little deeper.
BitMEX is going to keep pumping out some good content on this story.
Yeah,
we'll see research.
We'll see whether or not we did discover that through BitMEX research, and so hopefully they go into a little bit more detail. Because to me, that is the most surprising part.
A little mystery.
It's not like there's a control panel of people in a room deciding, yes, we like that transaction, or we like that one, or here's a block we like.
That's the beauty of Bitcoin.
Well,
or one of the beauties, I think.
It's the beauty of software.
Okay.
It's just that we don't want to do that manually. We do it, we do it automated by some software. And so there's no way that they said, oh my God, we updated an invalid block. We have a bug in the code. Quick, developers, fix it. Push out the fix. Oh, great, we got the next block. Like, no way in the world that happened.
How long would that take?
Oh, that would take days.
We know it didn't take. Okay.
That would take days.
Yeah, and they were able to get into basically the next 30 seconds, minute.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So the fact that somehow the same code disagreed with itself. Actually, I see one potential way that this could have happened.
Now that you're talking,
is that they possibly had different versions of their own software running at different parts of their mining.
Yeah.
Their mining farms. So you've got different servers running that are validating blocks. They've got a mining pool. It's distributed across different machines that are splitting up the workload. And so it's possible one just simply was an older version of the software. One was a newer. Maybe the newer one is the issue, right? But then the older one said, I disagree with you, and it happens to catch the next block, and then it simply stomps on top of that older one. So there is that possibility.
It could be a weird outlier, the probability of that is super low, but it had a freak occurrence. Could you hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry. Well,
so
who knows?
Who knows exactly? So we'll dig into that a little bit further, but it is an interesting anomaly that it happened. But it does prove that the Bitcoin network works. Even Bitmain checked themselves. They probably have some aspect of distributed systems internally.
Yeah.
And so while one system failed, another one kind of corrected. And so while they kind of lost money, they kind of didn't, because it was fortunate for them. It was the same network that actually solved the block. Although potentially they could have solved two.
Yep.
Right, instead of just one. Cool. All right, going into some other things, and you love talking about this stuff.
What
Brett,
are we
I get in here.
talking about?
I'm a developer at heart, so I love talking about the kind of technical stuff. But Brett loves talking, waxing poetic about government and their
it's so beautiful.
Their philosophy on crypto and Bitcoin and what they think. And it's been a hot day for
like a week.
Government,
Yeah.
a week actually, for
Yeah.
government interaction with crypto and what they've had to say. And kick off with what?
Actually, I think
Federal Reserve.
There's two
Chairman?
people that are consequential now
Yeah.
that have entered the conversation. The first one was the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, and he was testifying in front of Congress. I'm not sure if it was the Senate or the House, but actually that doesn't really matter. But he was in front of one of the bodies of Congress, and they asked him about cryptocurrency in kind of a concerned way. What does this do to the dollar and stuff like that? And I thought Jerome Powell, in particular, gave a great answer as the Federal Reserve Chair. He's not a Bitcoiner, and
Or maybe
he
secretly
actually,
is.
you never know. He might be pumping our bags, or his own bags. But they asked him about it, and he addressed it pretty straightforwardly. That they've looked into it and they know about it. They're aware of it, and as far as they're concerned, it hasn't been adopted for payments on any type of wide scale, which is true.
Very true.
And he said, but people have been using it as a store of value, a speculative instrument, and compared it and kind of took the meme, digital gold, and ran with it. Kind of accepted that meme, be like, look, it might be a new type of gold for the digital age, and going forward, he could see it doesn't necessarily concern him because in other parts in the history of the United States, there were multiple currencies running in parallel, and he recognized that and wasn't too worried about it.
It's interesting that he mentioned that he saw a possible future where we do have multiple currencies running in parallel.
Yeah, and he
that
just
is,
stated it as fact, like
it is a matter of fact.
This could happen. Yeah.
But didn't state that being a positive or a negative.
No.
Especially the fact they didn't state it being a negative is what kind of surprised me, because the Federal Reserve, while definitely a lot of people in our industry hate the idea of a Federal Reserve, realize that it does bring in one benefit, which was some aspect of efficiency of currency within one demographic, which was the United States.
So
you don't have hundreds of currencies to deal with, which is on a user experience level pretty nice.
Exactly. I think we're both on the same page. We're in cryptocurrency. We are pro sovereignty, pro sound money. But if you're I think you can easily steelman the U.S. dollar and what the Federal Reserve does if you look at its function, and it's definitely optimized for moving people out of the cash and into like productive investments, so to speak. And usually that's like direct, demand deposit or loans and stuff like that.
Force
and
you
also
actually do more with your money than hold it, because it doesn't really hold much value.
Right, and they also want to weaken the strength of their liability, so to speak. And they also it's very optimized for consumer spending, because the United States has been turned into a kind of a consumer of the global goods that are produced, right? So the U.S. dollar is highly optimized and is very good for consumer spending. It's not good at some of the things that Bitcoin is good. Bitcoin is not designed, or it's not optimized for it. I think it can be, but it's not. The U.S. dollar is specifically set up for a great user experience in terms of just spending at the store. Right.
So it is, ironically, I think that it's seen as definitely much more than that right now. It is, especially in other countries, seen as an actual store of value.
That's true. It has. I mean, it is money. It's clearly money, and it has that function. But I think if we're gonna, as a store of value,
and actually a unit of account for long-term contracts. So that's a pretty important piece that actually helps its stability in the first place. The fact that I'll say I'll pay you this amount for oil over the course of the next 10, 20 years.
That's huge.
Or I'll take a loan out on a home, a 30-year loan, priced in a specific unit.
I would personally rather hold, U.S. Banknotes or U.S. $100 bills or some type of bank account than some of the other terrible projects. In my
fiats.
Well,
they're fiats.
I'm just saying small cryptocurrencies, right?
Yeah.
So we spend a lot of time and there's a lot of things to trash about the dollar, but it's like on our hierarchy, I like Bitcoin and gold and some of the other cool crypto projects. But at the end of the day, the Federal Reserve is probably one of the better central banks in the world, which isn't like a ringing endorsement, but they do a good job. And Federal Reserve Chairman Powell gave like a minute, 2 minutes, very fair and not too dismissive,
not biased.
So that was good. Now the second one and more exciting,
in contrast to
Mr. Trump, Mr. Orange Man.
Yep.
He had a series of tweets and it does make sense because in what he was doing is trying to pump his bags, which is the dollar bags.
Right. He's got quite a few of those.
He's got quite a few of those, and let's see. So I think the first tweet was about Bitcoin. And when Trump tweets about it, there's a whole industry around Trump's tweets. Either they love him or they hate him. You know, there's like just I can't.
Very polarizing, Mr. Trump.
Yeah, there's like millions of people that are just dedicated to his Twitter feed and what he's saying. So it was like kind of the Eye of Sauron had finally like moved its gaze over to what we've been working on for years, and so that was just.
He's I think actually
day.
even the first president to even acknowledge the existence of Bitcoin.
Oh no. Obama did it. Remember the Swiss bank account? Remember he made that comment?
He made the comment. He didn't say Bitcoin.
Okay.
He just said,
didn't even mention it.
He said we need privacy. Oh, no, we need to be able to get access to encryption, and encryption can't cause people to have a Swiss bank account in their pocket.
Yes. Okay, but he didn't say Bitcoin. He said crypto.
Someone, feel free to comment on YouTube if I'm wrong, but I don't believe he actually said Bitcoin. Fact check. Anyone in the room?
No, anyone?
Did Obama actually say Bitcoin at any point in his presidency? I don't believe he did, but I could be wrong.
So,
but definitely Trump has.
I mean, this is huge. He is the driver of culture.
Mm-hmm.
Love or hate. You know, he's the drive. Whatever he talks about, there's millions of people talking about it the next day. And like I said, the Eye of Sauron has moved over and has gazed at Bitcoin and is aware of it. And he said he doesn't like it.
The interesting thing is, I think he's alienated a lot of people with some of his recent comments.
100%. Oh, in his own base.
Own base,
and a lot of his base is a type of personality where they'll dump someone if they don't toe the line.
And his base he's kind of founded on the kind of anti-establishment base of also big companies and banks, blah blah blah. They're the evil ones, big media and whatnot.
100%.
And then he went on to say that even taking a knock at Facebook's Libra, saying, "Well, you've got to go get banking license and charters and whatnot."
That was another tweet he put up about Facebook. Doesn't like that either, Libra. Yeah. They need to get a banking charter, banking license, which I actually think he's probably correct in that that tweet. Well, I think whatever Facebook or Libra set up, they probably they looked at all whatever they had to do to avoid that.
Right.
But I think as the President of the United States, you can you have a little power there to bring them at least to all right, what are we doing here? What's going on?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the problem with the Libra project in general is that the Eye of Sauron can now look at you, and there is a entity that it can kind of grab onto.
Not only is there an entity, but if you're the Eye of Sauron, you can't see the hobbits inside of the little trees and whatnot. But if you're Facebook, you're this gigantic.
They're looking at each other.
Yeah, you can't not see Facebook.
They can't. Trump can't see down here. With us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're able to kind of scurry in the woods unseen and kind of cut off the legs.
And that's exactly the design Satoshi
of actual real cryptocurrency.
Exactly. And I don't think it's out of bounds for them to really dig into what Facebook's doing, right?
I would expect it.
U.S. corporation.
I would expect
it. They're challenging the banking and central banking system. So
they are trying to form Libra in such that there isn't a corporate entity necessarily behind it.
But I have 100%
foundation,
faith that
nonprofit. We'll see if they're
Zuck
successful.
and company hired the right people and smart people that have already gone through these legal arguments and what the federal government could potentially do, right? So I have a lot of faith that they'll probably set it up in a way that they'll be able to do it. And then I think there was another one where he was pumping the U.S. dollar. That was another tweet where he was like, there's only one currency. It's the United States dollar. Right. It's the most dominant in the world, and it'll always be that way.
It'll always be that way.
Always be that way.
That was the one part of his phrase, that statement that said, "Oh my God."
You always need a little. He has to add a little hyperbole to.
Hyperbole that you can clearly latch on to go. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
He's a dollar maximalist, right? You could see the same behavior on
Bitcoin,
Ethereum, right? It'll be the dominant one forever. I don't know if that's true for any of them. I think
nothing.
If you look at the history of reserve currencies, it flows.
Nothing
it
is forever.
wanes, and it seems like it is. It might be very dominant for a century or even 2 centuries.
Nothing is forever.
Nothing is forever. Sorry, Mr. Trump, but
nothing at all is
Bitcoin,
forever.
You can't really do anything about it. And to add a little more color to it, his chief of staff is Mick Mulvaney, who has been historically a sound money guy and has said some positive things in the past about Bitcoin and comes from a libertarian type background. Second, Trump made a somewhat controversial Federal Reserve pick or it's added someone to the Federal Reserve Board in some capacity, and her name is Judy Shelton. Mm-hmm. Now, it's controversial for like economists that are into this kind of stuff because she is someone that advocates for a gold standard, and she's been doing that for years. Also, Mr. Trump himself has if you look at all his hotels, I was just in Las Vegas, it's all gold.
Right, exactly.
All gold, everything. So
drop gold, Bitcoin. He probably hates that ad campaign.
And I would think this is a big. We're not in the position to do it right away, but it would be a big hit to Bitcoin's narrative if something like the United States went to some type of standard. I don't know if it would be gold, but something that limited monetary policy.
Meaning that they actually went back to not being able to arbitrarily inflate fiat currency.
Yeah, I think the existential threat from the U.S. government is not attacking it. I think that would actually be, it would hurt its price, but it would actually make the network stronger. But it would take the sound money narrative away. A little bit. For sure. Even for someone like me, I would be like,
no precedent for that ever happening.
I don't. Like, I'm not betting on that. I still hold Bitcoin. I'm not betting on. I can't imagine
that we suddenly peg the dollar.
But I'll say we're closer than we ever have been in moving in that direction.
To actually having the dollar pegged to sound money?
Yeah. Well, firstly, they have a lot of competition from private monies now, or I should public networks and private monies like Facebook. Right. So they're going to have to adjust in some way. Like the post office is using the internet now.
Right.
So I think, we're in an era of like new thinking. So
it is.
Central banks are going to have their own currencies, or digital currencies.
We're in an era of new thinking, but history shows that you don't get the legacy kind of prior incumbents actually innovating on the new thinking, and they just simply get displaced. Yeah. They're really good, especially in their own industry. So in the industry of money, the Federal Reserve won't be an early adopter of new thinking in respect of money. In the same sense that if Google or search in general could be innovated on, it likely won't come from Google. It'll come from another upstart. Google might innovate in another industry, such as self-driving cars, mapping, and things like that. But typically an incumbent doesn't innovate their own industry.
Well, it's hard to get
Someone
out
else
of
comes
those loops of like
you get in the comfort zone. Yeah, exactly. You're super comfort zone. You don't want to like jump out of that.
Why would you?
Yeah, exactly.
You're raking in money for
You're raking money, and almost every single one of the people that were early invested are already wealthy. If the company tanks, they're
all at Burning Man.
Yeah, now they are. Yeah. Yep. And so why bother? And so I don't imagine the Federal Reserve is going to jump on new innovative ideas for how to deal with money and effectively making it sound, which is weird because that's kind of a new idea, but it's coming from the old.
I'm 100% with you. Yeah. I've just never, in my short lifetime, I haven't seen us this close in terms of like the president, his chief of staff, federal, and competition will definitely push them into changing up whatever it is that they've been doing the last.
Here's why I think they won't even be successful if they tried. 10, so let's say they tried, and let's say Trump or another president goes, every penny is now backed by blah amount of gold, and you can actually go to the bank and withdraw it. That's still not provable. It's still not provable how many dollars are out there and how much of it is actually redeemable in gold, because it's really a bitch to actually transfer gold. So would I actually want to take my dollar bills that I've got in the bank or physically and redeem them for physical gold? Maybe some of it.
I don't know. I don't think I'm with you. I don't know if the gold standard is but having a standard, a limitation on and a predictability to monetary policy, because now there's
I just don't think they can be successful at it because people wouldn't even trust that it's happening. Whatever they say won't necessarily trust that it's actually happening.
That might be true, but they could prove it over time.
We got one question regarding Trump. We actually got a question. Brett, do you think that Trump will actually accept Justin Sun's invitation to sit with crypto leaders?
Yes, because I believe in Justin Sun. Amazing marketing and business development talent. I don't know about his Tron project. I don't know that much about it, but he's a tremendous marketer.
He's a marketing genius.
And I'm not going to bet against him getting into it with
Trump kind of likes China.
He loves China. If someone wants to play with him and give him attention, then he's going to be like, hey, Justin Sun.
He seems like Asia. So that might be the reason.
I'm not betting against Justin Sun somehow meeting Trump.
But he'd have to meet him within Trump's term? I would say. Although it's less interesting, less useful. Which
Not
might be
definitely
only for a year.
Not
or
this
maybe
term.
for
It would
only
have
for-
to be if he gets reelected.
If he gets reelected.
I'm not taking that bet against Justin Sun on the marketing, business development, and clout chasing. I mean,
Since
that
you're
guy
out-
is number one.
So would you take the opposite bet that he's definitely going to? No, that's a little tough.
No, I'm just going to buy Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I don't want
take
to.
it.
I don't want to
That's
move
the only bet to
Bitcoin
get is
out.
buy Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Going kind of off topic because we're a little over on time. We've been talking now for about a little over half an hour, which is our scheduled time slot. Let's get to some other questions that were asked of us over the week that people weren't answered in the live Q&A. One was about U.S. government, so I think we kind of answered that to no end, about the government response, Federal Reserve, Trump. Going into the more technical details of Edge, we did get asked when ADA, Cardano. I hate to give kind of the generic response, but not on the roadmap yet. We do have a few. Definitely keep your ears peeled. We have several that are actually in development. Some pull requests have been submitted. We'll have some cool hot new currencies launched pretty soon. Currently, ADA is not on that roadmap, but we are actively looking at it. It happens to be built in a language that's a bit harder for us to incorporate.
Haskell? Or what is it? Not Haskell? I just always hear about everyone says Haskell.
Yeah.
Every time, or Cardano, Haskell.
Yeah. So it's a little bit harder for us to put that into a mobile device, in web technology, which is what we use. So we have to play some tricks. And so we're constantly looking at how to play those tricks, but we'll get in there eventually.
It's on our intentional roadmap.
It's in our,
it's like we
not
want
just intentional, but we'd like it.
Yeah.
But it requires
not on the technical
roadmap.
roadmap.
Definitely more work than a lot of the others.
And we have other priorities right now.
I hate to say that, but it's true. But
It's true.
it
There's
doesn't
got to be a
sound good.
hierarchy to priorities.
It just doesn't sound good. Yeah.
Mm.
But some of those priorities are seeing you guys and meeting some people in the real world. We got some events coming up.
That's true.
So
what are you going to be at?
I'll be here. We got some events here. So next week, we got Comic-Con next week. I'll be speaking on crypto at an offshoot event for
Not
Comic-Con.
the Avengers. You're
Avengers.
going to give some hot takes on Theranos. Is that how you say it? I'm not even up to date on this stuff.
What coin is that? Is that a blockchain?
No, exactly. I don't know.
Theranos?
Is Theranos?
That's
is
a
that how
scam.
you say it? Oh, probably.
Yeah.
What's the main character? I'm so out of this loop on superheroes.
Comic-Con. But anyway, so they are actually having an off event here in downtown. It's part of Comic-Con, but not quite in the convention center. And we'll have a room with panels and speakers talking about crypto specifically. A week after that, we've actually got the Cosmos team coming into town for at our Bitcoin blockchain meetup, talking about Cosmos and how the entire blockchain and consensus mechanism works. So we're excited to have them over here. As well, I'll be headed to the Spot conference in Hong Kong. That is on July 29th. So we head over there speaking at that conference, and we've got a few more down the line as well. Listen to next week. We'll give you more up to date, but those are the main events that are coming up in the next few weeks.
Cool. Yeah.
Cool. And if you have any other questions, feel free to shoot us those questions over Twitter or comment here on YouTube, and we'll get them answered next week.
And if you have any questions about the app or have any issues, contact support. We're here to help.
Yep, support.edge.app. Cool. Thanks a lot, everybody. Talk to you guys next week.